Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a very wet day today from the lovely city of Auckland. And how's weather down there, Rachel?
Not too bad actually. It's just cloudy, but it does look like it's going to rain later. We have got some black skies, but not too bad.
We'll send it down to you because we've had enough of it up here.
No, thank you.
Welcome back to the Macro Lounge, everybody. I am, of course, your co-host Chris Bold, joined by the apparently dry and still sparkly queen of all sparkles, Rachel Mead, live from Tauranga. So today we thought we'd see how much trouble we could get ourselves. And actually, I'm going to clarify this. Rachel's decided to see how much trouble she can get me into, which I think is highly unfair and very irresponsible from her. But luckily enough, she's got youth on her side, so I have to forgive her. But we thought we would go into one of the most talked about and misunderstood and often completely misrepresented topics in bodybuilding. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, performance-enhancing drugs. That's right. PEDs.
Now, we do need to, this one's going to be a little bit controversial because we know a lot of people have some very strong opinions on PEDs. So we are going to be kind of like a neutral party. We are just kind of doing education around the topic here. As an ex-teacher myself, so I used to teach health, and we would teach like 14-year-olds, for example, about drugs and alcohol and sex education, contraceptives, because it's very important to learn about things, because if you can't stop someone from doing it, the best thing you can do is educate them so that if they are going to do it anyway, they can be safe around it. Because it is a huge issue. If you are not educated and you're doing something you're not educated in, it's going to usually end up very bad. So it's better to be informed.
And let's face facts. Around this subject material, most people are definitely uneducated. They're very well informed, thanks to the joys of social media these days, but definitely uneducated. Which reminds us, I will do the legal part. Before we start this episode, it's important to note this is not medical advice and no coaching advice is given. This does not form a coaching or medical relationship between the host and the listeners. Everything us today is for education awareness purposes only. In full transparency, you are responsible for your own decisions, your own research, and your own health. I could get a job working for the public service announcement, couldn't I?
I could see the subtitles just coming up on the screen. The little subtitles that just scroll up with the terms and conditions. Yep. I could see them.
I could start working for public broadcasting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
You really could, or like be on the news, like or be a voice actor. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was good. So anyway, disclaimer: nothing here is advice. It's just shedding some light on the topic, as we will say.
We'd like to say educational, but more likely it's probably just going to be entertainment, because people are going to go, these two have completely lost their frickin' mind, which is probably true. So what are PEDs? So obviously it stands for performance-enhancing drugs, right? So this includes essentially anything used to improve your performance, enhance recovery, increase muscle growth, reduce fatigue, improve endurance, accelerate fat loss, and most people just think steroids, but it's a much broader category than that.
Technically, coffee, like I'm drinking right now, is a PED, technically. Caffeine is a PED. It's not an illegal one, but it is.
This is true. It's probably illegal in certain dosages, but
I don't think it is. I actually don't think there's any set dosage for caffeine, as far as I'm aware.
I know there's set dosage for what you can put in something, but I don't know if that's like...
Yes.
So, PEDs breaks into, in simple layman's terms, it sort of bakes into some major categories. You've got your anabolic androgenic steroids, which is what most people think of when they think of PEDs. You've got your peptides, you've got your fat loss agents, you've got things like performance enhancers, and they're not always visible what they are, but because there's also a physiological impact as well.
And it's interesting because you can actually also get steroid injections for, like, literally medically prescribed to you for certain injuries. So sometimes it's not even for performance enhancing, it's literally just to fix your injuries. So there is there's a lot of, obviously, controversy around it. There's a lot of grey area as well. It's not necessarily as black and white as a lot of people believe it to be, which is one of the reasons we're talking about it. Because otherwise, if everyone just believes it's black and white, it's very hard to actually say, hey, this is actually the way it is. So remember, there is a lot of grey area. So for example, caffeine, steroid injections for injuries. A lot of people probably have them. I know they're quite common in shoulders.
Yep.
Knees, I think. I can't remember.
You got a difference between essentially what's called a corticosteroid.
They are different things, though.
Steroid and an anabolic steroid. And the thing you have to remember is that anabolic steroids were all, at one time, were designed for a medical purpose. And then at various points along the time, they went, there's a few other side effects on that one. We probably shouldn't be giving that to people for this. The problem has become that any of these steroids that are designed generally to do things like prevent muscle wastage or atrophy from people that are going through, say, renal failure or an actual medical condition. Generally, some bright spark athlete's gone, hang on, if you take 5 milligrams of that a day and you're going to maintain weight in a 3-year-old mouse, if I take 300 milligrams a day, I'm going to be jacked. And that's pretty much where most of the research has come from. It's called bro science, ladies and gentlemen.
Self-experimentation.
Nope. No, nothing about that.
No. Other athletes across the world. Okay. Not around here, obviously. Other people that we have never met before.
Theoretically speaking.
But yes, no. But
right, this is going to go downhill quick.
So we've already said Chris is American. He's allowed to plead the fifth today. So anything that I say, for example, if I ask him about something that gets a little bit dicey, he's allowed to plead the fifth. So back on track. So different types of steroids. So explain to us people who maybe are less educated, what's an androgenic steroid? What does that mean? Some people might not know that word.
Well, you've got anabolic, which its effects relate to muscle growth, right? Then you've got androgenic, which effects relate to masculinization traits. So they are slightly different. Okay, so that's where you also, particularly when you're sort of talking about, say, female athletes in the sport, you want an anabolic effect, but you don't want the androgenic effects. So there are different compounds that do different things. Then, obviously, the next one, probably the most common aspect now that people ask about, it used to be back in the day, you start training somebody and 3 months into their training, they go, when do I start taking gear? Now it's about 3 weeks and it's like, when do I start taking Retta? It's generally the first thing is like, when do I start taking peptides now? And you're like, because they're often marketed as being safer. But again,
I do actually think that peptides are almost marketed as not being PEDs. A lot of the stuff I've seen on peptides, because you often see like supplements, like collagen supplements that will, collagen is peptide. Yes, but people have the association that peptides are basically, it's just like collagen. It's not something that you could just buy at a supplement store. So now when people are marketing peptide use, it almost sounds like it's not a PED, which some are banned, some are not. But it's very interesting because a lot of people don't realize that a lot of them are banned.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. It's even less what's banned and what's not. The reality is most peptides out there are not actually approved for human consumption.
But actually, let's go back. What are peptides, Chris? Sorry,
peptides are essentially amino acids. They are generally, by and large, they're all found in the human body already, and they've just been synthesized to use for other purposes. And things like, one of the most common ones is called BPC 157, or body protective compound. That's actually found in the stomach. And when they synthesized it, they found it had other benefits. But yeah, they're basically amino acids, which is also why no big pharmaceutical company is actually investing any money in them, because you can't trademark something that already exists in nature. So they can't make any money out of it. But they're pretty much, it's unregulated. It is the Wild West out there. They can be inconsistently dosed. They can be, there's all sorts of things that can go on with peptides. But there is a lot of really exciting research, not from a performance enhancing aspect, but from a health and longevity aspect. And some of that sort of does tie hand in hand with what we would call PEDs. But I also think that's a whole different it's a whole different subject unto itself. Full disclosure, I'm actually a big fan of peptides. Again, in the right context, in the right environment, which we'll go on when we talk about natural, natties versus unnatural, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's a really exciting subject, peptides, just in general. Then the other ones, you've got your fat loss compounds, and they're often underestimated as they can significantly increase your metabolic rates. Performance enhancers may not necessarily change your size, but they can dramatically affect your ability to be able to recover, and also to be able to go longer. So yeah, those are your three main ones, really. And that's without going into things like, human growth hormone and all that sort of carry on. You can start going down a massive rabbit warren, and then the next thing you know, you're 3 hours, deep, 4 coffees, and it's 2:00 in the morning. You're like still on the first subject. So
there's a lot of this. There's a lot of things that go into this. So which one of the three would you say would be the most common in bodybuilding, do we think?
Anabolic steroids is the most common. The reality of it is, do they work? Absolutely. You can't, you only have to look at, search any form of, pro bodybuilder, and you're like, I don't know, people are going to come out saying, well, you've got natural pro bodybuilders. Great, cool. Yep, you do. And they're brilliant athletes. But, you only have to look at any open bodybuilder or any, classic or men's physique bodybuilder, and you can say, now there's a classic example of what steroids can do, kiddies.
So actually, that's a good question. With PEDs, if you take PEDs, is it just a shortcut, or can it take you further than you could ever do naturally? Is it something that would bring you past the point of natural achievement, or is it something that just shortens the time frame?
Both.
Both.
It's really both. And we'll get into
So you
that
get further
later on.
and faster at the same time.
Yep, $6 million man. You can cover all of them. Look, the reality of that, PEDs, is they're not risk-free. There is always a physiological cost. There's a lot of risks that you have to consider about, and that's mainly why we're talking about this today, is so that you can be aware of the risks and you can make an informed decision. But, the common short-term risk is blood pressure elevation, sleep disruption, mood instability. Everybody's heard about that. Cholesterol changes, liver stress. And then you've got your long-term exposure, which gives us a major long-term health risks like cardiovascular disease, hormonal suppression, kidney stress, fertility complications, metabolic dysfunction. And we do talk a lot about sparkly classes, and there is a lot of PED use in the female classes, and they've got some very specific sets of specific risks, including voice deepening, facial hair growth, hormone disruption, fertility complications, clitoral enlargement, all these sort of things that really, and some of them cannot be undone. They can be long-term complications that you cannot reverse.
Do you think that females are more affected or have more side effects than males? Or pretty even, just dosage difference?
I think it's more comes down to female usage is more calculated, and it has to be. Essentially, you're not injecting milligrams of estrogen, because that just ain't going to achieve the result. You are essentially injecting male hormones into your body in order to get an anabolic effect. Generally, females is much more calculated, and you have to be much more risk adverse. There's a lot more nuance to it than, say, you can look at the average, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but you can look at the average meathead bodybuilder at any gym, and he don't give a flying rat's ass what he's running. He'll just inject whatever he can get his hands on in order to get swole, bro. And, sure, your balls are going to shrink, and your heart's going to enlarge, and you're potentially going to kill yourself somewhere down the line. But, risk, right? It's different. I think the females, it's a lot more nuanced. So, I don't know. I think from a health side of things, you've got to think about from a long-term trend is you are looking at increases in your LDL and your HDL. You're talking anywhere from 30 to 70% increase, which is obviously increasing your risk factor. Blood pressure is going to increase by up to 30 to 50% of long-term users have shown measurable heart structure changes. That shit will kill you. The damage accumulates quietly. It's not generally obvious.
So it's kind of like, sorry, I tracked here, but it's kind of like we're gonna go back to cats because I have a big They are very large. They are very prone to heart disease because of their size. Same with ragdolls because they are the largest cat breeds that you can get. And generally, so that's kind of like that almost.
Kind of, yep. Which is also what
when you
it
get too
sounds
big,
silly, but
your heart can't keep up.
Larger dogs, they don't live as long, unfortunately. But the thing is, everybody's recovery from use, varies from a health perspective. Some people can recover in 12 months. Some remain repressed long term. And
everyone has different effects.
Yeah, it all comes down to what you're doing and, understanding the risk multipliers. Risk multiplies and stacks up with the more that you do. So that's the thing. And that's pretty much what today is learning the risk, and it gets worse. The risk factors and potential side effects get worse as you go through a competing career, particularly when you're in prep. If you start adding in extreme calorie deprivation, dehydration, sleep deprivation, any form of, we talked last week about illness or injury, particularly during peak week, you adding all these risk factors onto something else, and they can amplify the potential side effects and risks of using these lovely little supplements, which, as people like to say, my supplement stack. Yeah, right.
That's always the one. It's the this is what the supplements that I take.
To be fair, some people have no idea what they're taking. I've actually seen athletes come to me from other coaches, and they've given me their supplement stack, and it's got protein, blah 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 blah, and all these things down. And then I go, "What's that?" "Oh, that's my pre-workout." No, it's not. That's called Anavar. That is an anabolic steroid. And then they go, "Well, what's that?" "That's my fat burner." Technically, yes, but clenbuterol is also a banned substance, my dear. No clue. They're just taking it because that's what they're told to do.
To be honest, though, I've been told that some pre-workouts, I don't think it's as common now, but in the past they have had banned substances in them.
Oh, yeah.
So you do also need to be a little bit careful. And it's actually really interesting because it's not really something that's talked about in natural bodybuilding as much as it's talked about in any other sport. Like any Olympic sport, you have like drug-free sport coming to you, like having a speech, this is what to look out for, you need to make sure you're doing the informed choice tick, testing your supplements, blah, blah, blah. In bodybuilding, even in natural bodybuilding, you don't actually really get that, which I find really interesting. Like
it's completely different. But it's like anything, like if you're doing, and we'll talk a little bit about like the enhanced and versus natural federations a bit later, but you've got to be making an informed choice. But as you said about it, like fat burners, for example, is a classic example. Back in my day, which was pre-Stone Age, where you'd used a bit of stone and a chisel to send our messages to people. We didn't have Instagram and social media and stuff. But you could rock up into any form of supplement store and you'd buy your fat burner and it had ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin, and that shit worked. It's also now highly illegal.
Which is why it worked.
Exactly. If you bought a fat burner that worked, it probably had ephedrine in it. God,
what is ephedrine, by the way?
It's a broncholant. It basically makes everything just work faster. It essentially opens up the capillaries and exudations. You get more oxygen and more blood in.
Okay, so it's a stimulant.
Oh yeah, it's what you see in. Remember how they took it out of cough medicine, and then they found out that none of the cough medicines were working because they didn't actually have any ephedrine in them. So now they put it back. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cough medicine.
Use a couple of shots of that before you go to the gym. Smack back some coffee. A couple of cups of coffee and grind some aspirin into it.
No, don't do that, guys. Don't do that.
Don't do that. We'll get. I can just see Brenda now. Cancelled. That's it.
That was a joke.
But was it?
It was, guys. It was. Anyway, before Chris gets us cancelled.
Me? You asked the damn question. I have no responsibility for that.
I wanted to know what the substance was. You throw them out there. We don't always know the name of it. Sometimes we hear of substances, we don't know what they are. And it's always good to know, because otherwise we might see that particular substance, like ephedrine, and like, oh yeah, that's okay to take because it's in cough medicine.
Yeah. In some countries, you can still get some of the fat burners will still have it, not in New Zealand or Australia or the US or something like that. But yeah, as a rule of thumb, if it's a fat burner, it's probably not going to work because it's missing those three key ingredients, which are ephedrine, aspirin, and caffeine. And we used to call it an ECA stack. I mean, you would run it. Basically, it was legalized speed.
Right, so kind of like my ADHD meds, but like better.
Yep.
Which actually, speaking of, my meds are also banned, unless you have a therapeutic exemption.
Yes, which we can talk about that too, because that is very important.
I find it really interesting because, like, in any other sport, it would possibly be helpful for a normal person to take it. But in bodybuilding, on the day, that's the time you're not allowed to take it, but that's probably also the time it's the least helpful.
Yeah, unless you've gone and actually applied for a therapeutic use exemption. Although, to be fair, in a bodybuilding environment, as a general rule, they're probably not going to test for that anyway. They are actually looking for specific anabolic compounds. Generally, they might get a red flag coming up saying, there's something in particular unusual about this urine test, and they could dive into it deeper. Generally, as a rule, the urinalysis testing is freaking expensive. And when we talked to Sully Sullivan a few episodes back, when he was talking about how much they spend on drug testing just in one show, and that's when you go, that shit's pricey.
It's also really interesting because, like, in other sports, you don't really need it as much, like, because it's just not really a thing. Like, in swimming, I never got drug tested once, and, like, you only get drug tested if you are breaking New Zealand records and qualifying for the Olympics.
If you're like,
that's the only
she's
time.
Fast. You're like, I smell something fishy going on here.
Literally, you have to, like, break a record, really, or, like, occasionally they'll test the winners of, like, the New Zealand Nationals, but even then, it's only really if you break a record. So it's so rare to get drug tested in most other sports, which I find really quite funny. It's just, like, I guess it's the, because we have untested bodybuilding federations, I guess lowers the bar, or, like, opens...
The reality is, in New Zealand, a few years back, when a certain three-letter federation was looking into doing the natural side, I was sort of tasked with looking into how do we basically become part of, what was called New Zealand drug-free sports at the time. And they were just going through the process of name changing. It was a really interesting process. One, when you look at how much it cost, and it's hellishly expensive just to join the program. But having gone through it, they literally told me, we will probably never show up and test any of your competitions because it's a non-priority sport. The priority sports in New Zealand are your rugbies, your netballs, and there was another one that they mentioned. And those were essentially the main ones where they were sort of looking out for. Now, they would say, we may show up And if we do show up, you have to be tested. And that's to be to fall under that umbrella where you could get government funding and all that sort of stuff. But their testing was like $1,000 for every athlete. That was like $1,000, and you were like, sure. So yeah, that's why in swimming, unless you broke a national record and you were 12 years old and you just beat a 20-year, they're like, she didn't swim that fast last year. What have they been feeding that girl? Yeah, as a rule, under sorry, I don't remember what the name of the organisation is now, but under what was New Zealand drug-free sport, yeah, the likelihood of bodybuilding of you being tested was slim to none.
I just feel like it's just expected in other sports that you don't do it. Although, to be honest, bodybuilding has opened my eyes to the fact that a very large percentage of the top Olympic athletes probably are.
I would say the very large percentage of elite athletes in general are in some way or another using some form of performance enhancement. I think there's a reason that some sports in their union contracts literally do not allow them to be tested. And why is that? Because they probably freaking fail. And bodybuilding is one of those sports where you kind of just assume that everybody's using it.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Yeah, when you're like, and you've got a whole bunch of natural athletes that are, very firm advocates of natural drug-free bodybuilding, and they'd be horrified that I just said that. And we'll probably get lots of comments going, no, we never used. This is generalization of what most people think. There's the assumption there that in a sport like bodybuilding, strongmen, when was the last time you saw a strongman flunk a drug test? Never, because they are not tested. Because why would you test some guy who's 6'2" and weighs 400?
You do get like both sides though. Like when I would talk to my students back when I was teaching, like some of them would straight away say, "Oh, are you using? Like, are you on something? Or do you take steroids?" But then others would assume that all bodybuilding was natural. So it was really interesting the contrast. It was like you'd either assume that everyone was on, or you'd assume that everyone was not. Whereas, it's a lot more grey than that. But yes,
I think you're probably getting more. Like the funny thing was, like back in the dark ages, like back in the 80s and you would never hear a professional Olympia level bodybuilder. They would never talk about PED use. And in fact, you would read all the magazines and they would swear black and blue that they've never taken one in their lives. And you're like, you lying. But they would never. Nowadays, they're showing up at seminars and they'll tell people what they're taking. Down to the gram, down to the, everything is very specific. Yep. Like, I'm doing, which I think is actually better because it's like, if you're misled, and actually, it's going to sort of bring that up about social media distortion. But if you're misled to thinking somebody looks that way naturally, I'm going with the theory if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a drug-using duck. That's going to be a real. I can see that one now.
Oh my goodness, is it?
At this point, Valerie's going, shit.
No, yes. I think, to be honest, my personal opinion on it, so we're just going to put that out there. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not necessarily against if people want to use performance enhancing drugs, that is their decision, but do not say that you are natural. You can say, I'd rather not say. You can say, I don't want to say anything, but do not say that you are natural. Because, I mean, obviously, understandably, a lot of these drugs are illegal. You don't want to go out there promoting it, maybe. Like, some people don't want to go out there saying, yeah, I'm breaking the law. But you should not be actively saying, yes, I am natural. That's my big thing, is like, if you are taking something, good for you, but don't tell everyone that you are not.
I kind of think in this day and age that he who protests too much is probably a lying motherfucker.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect her every day that much. Like, I mean, some people make it their entire personalities, yes, but...
It's like, I've never failed a drug test in my life. It's like, well, no, because you knew you were getting drug tested. What do you think we are, stupid?
Which is actually something that's interesting, is that the issue that we have with drug testing is that it only tests for the shelf life. If it's taken within a certain amount of time, sometimes it doesn't get picked up.
I mean, there was a time when the IFBB Federation, as they're called now, the amateur IFBB, they were really, really pushing. This was under the Ben Weider days, who, unfortunately, the Weiders are no longer with us. They were Joe and Ben Weider. But when Ben Weider was the president of the IFBB, they were really, really pushing for Olympic inclusion, which was never going to happen. Until you start doing randomized, random drug testing out of the blue, you're never going to catch the cheaters. Because if you test positive on the day, you're a freaking idiot. If you know you're being drug tested. And that's why I like some of the natural federations who are now randomly showing up and testing their athletes. And I'm like, and we'll talk a little bit about that too when we get onto the federation size. But I'm like, more power to you. Like, if somebody shows up on Rachel's door, now that she's a pro, if Brenda shows up on Rachel's door and says, pee in this, Rachel's contractually obligated to do that. And if she fails that drug test, which I know she never will, but if she failed that drug test, then good on it. Good on the Federation for stepping up and paying.
I thought you were saying
250.
good on me, and I was like, what?
I'd be like, she's
Good
taking
on
it
her.
on. I'd be like, fuck. I know we talk about what you don't tell me, Rachel, but that's crossing a line. I might get a bit upset with you.
But yes,
But I think it's as I said, this would probably go all over the place, this episode. But I think social media distortion is, we talked the other day about you've got your competitive bodybuilders and you've got your social media bodybuilders. There's more people who will never step on stage than there are who will step on stage. And the reality is, for as big as some of these federations are, they're nothing compared to some of the social media followers out there who are never going to go through dieting on stage. But the most PED curiosity kind of begins with the comparison. So, which social media can cause a lot of distortions. You've got underreported drug use, you've got misleading timelines, you've got selective presentation about what they do, and they're setting unrealistic expectations because they're like, unless you're somebody like, what are the trend twins? Like, dude,
no,
we're
not
on
the
trend.
trend twins.
Yeah, but they're the opposite, right? They're like, yep, we're jacked to the gills. And you're like, kind of go, well, yeah, you're a dickhead, but, hey, you got a following. But, when these people are adamantly showing the highlights of how you can look, and they are aggressively promoting their natural lifestyle, and they're probably actively using PEDs, actively using SARMs, they may not be jacking themselves with every form of testosterone under the sun. Some of them are. Or they say, I'm on TRT. Well, dude, that's steroid use,
What
I'm
are
sorry.
SARMs, Chris? Chris, what are SARMs?
Again, similar thing. They're considered to be safer, but the reality of it is, and a lot of them are legal, the reality is if they were as effective as people claim, they'd be banned.
Actually, that's an interesting one. Because there is some PEDs that people will almost market as being safe PEDs. I say that with quotation marks for those of you listening. What's your thoughts on that, Chris? Like with the quotation safe PEDs that usually this is more for like bikini athletes would take this, or fit model, or like they would look into taking this potentially because, again, the marketing of it's safe.
Every PED has a risk. So it's not what is safe, because there is no such thing as safe. It's what has the lowest risk profile. And you as an individual, not as an athlete or as a competitor, but what is the risk that you are prepared to take? And that's a personal choice. There are ones that have lower risk profiles, which are frequently used by female athletes. There are ones that are more actively pushed by various different coaches or social media followers, all that sort of carry on. But they all have a risk. And you have to, particularly as a female athlete, you have to weigh up what that risk is to you, as I said. It's all very sexy when you're 21 years old and you're like, woohoo! And then you start thinking, well, shit, if I want to have children or, I've got to think further down the line, you're going to pay. Somewhere along the line, you're going to pay.
It is actually a very interesting other side effect to PEDs is aging, right? That you tend to age a lot quicker. So if people like, for example, the Trent twins, to my knowledge, they're very young, right? Aren't they only like 21 or something?
Early 20s, yeah.
Early 20s. They look
like they're in
at
their
least
mid-30s.
35, mid-30s, late 30s. So that is also something to consider is it does age you. It does make you look significantly older and very significantly quickly.
Which is sort of brings us back down to peptides. A lot of the peptides are where they're primarily being studied for is from a longevity perspective. So you've got things where they're looking at mitochondrial health, they're looking at metabolic health, they're looking at how they can assist in improving your digestive system, looking at things like the length of the telomeres and all that sort of carry on so you can handle a bigger stress load, collagen improvement in the skin, hair improvement. That's their primary where they're looking at their research. And from a sports perspective, where they're getting, some of them are being banned, is not because they're bad, but because taking them will improve your ability to be able to perform. It'll improve your ability to be able to recover. It'll improve these things, which means they are an enhancement. They're not necessarily bad. They just fall into a performance enhancing substance, which therefore, if somebody else doesn't have access to it, then it kind of creates an unfair thing.
Yeah, there's always things like that in every sport. So it's like athletics, certain types of shoes are banned. You're actually not allowed to use shoes that are not for retail sale in athletics. You are not allowed your own custom pair of shoes. Like swimming, so the tech suits all got banned because everyone broke records in Rio, and those records are still standing because a lot of those tech suits were banned.
With a little asterisk by them.
Some things in sports just help a bit too much, and that's when the sport will ban them.
Yeah, and generally, as a rule of thumb, if it comes in a vial and a needle, it's probably banned.
Do you think they will ever allow peptides? This is a speculative question.
No, I think, again, because it falls under that, it can enhance your performance above what you are naturally capable of doing, or can enhance your ability to recover. It's an improvement. And you could argue, well, so are things like multivitamins and protein powder and all this sort of stuff. It improves your ability to be able to do something. So you could argue that both ways, but I think that pretty much the accepted position is it is taking you above what is normal realms, which is like you can get therapeutic use exemptions for certain drugs and certain hormones. I know that in most federations, particularly I know in the ICN and I know in the OCB, this is the case. A female athlete who is under hormone replacement therapy, rightly or wrongly, in ICN, because I did apply for somebody's therapeutic use exemption last year, there are certain hormone replacement therapy medications that are considered to be okay. Okay, as long as you disclose it in advance, and then because they can tell between what's been introduced and what's natural. So it's not just a case of like, Jesus, your hormone level is through the roof. Like, yeah. But they can tell what's been introduced. OCB, for example, and technically the NPC worldwide as well, any form of hormone replacement therapy is illegal. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that.
I believe that's a WADA thing, though, isn't it?
No, you can get.
Oh, I thought it was.
You can get for certain hormones under WADA, you can get a therapeutic use exemption. What you can't do, and this is where the whole hormone replacement therapy treatment for women is like, I get on this high horse, and because I was having seen Val go through this, it's like, testosterone for women's hormone replacement therapy is not currently recognized as an acceptable hormone replacement treatment.
That was what I was talking about there.
Testosterone is a no. I personally think that's bullshit. But again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not an expert. It's from what I've seen, it's beneficial. And generally, a lot of it can be improved by taking testosterone, but it's not currently recognized as an acceptable version of hormone replacement therapy, which then takes us down that whole discussion about what is hormone replacement therapy for women and should it be made readily available. And then you get a doctor who says, it's going to cause breast cancer. And you're like, no, it's not.
Because it's for women. If it was for men, all the men stuff is all heavily researched and all very much everyone knows about it. The woman, no. We aren't allowed to.
But anyway, moving on. Which actually brings us on to a very interesting question. Not only what is legal, but you have ethics versus legality.
Yes.
So legal does not mean safe. Illegal does not mean rare. And having an underground market increases the risk. You've got counterfeit compounds, you've got unknown purity, you've got incorrect dosing.
From my very limited knowledge, purity is very, very important, I believe, from what I've heard and seen.
Yep. Purity, dosing, accurate. This is actually what you think you're taking. Look, unless you've got a script from a doctor and you went and picked it up from the chemist warehouse, you're playing with fire. And people say, oh, but I get it from a legit source and they do certificates of authenticity. It's like, well, I can tell you for a fact, unless you actually send that off to a lab for yourself and have it tested, that's probably bullshit. And
testing
in New Zealand...
kits? Can you get testing kits? They don't do that?
They do, but they really do show inaccurate thing. The honest trade trip here, ladies and gentlemen, if you do choose to go down this road, you can actually send the drugs off to certain labs around the world. It'll cost you $120 to get the thing tested. On the downside, you won't get it back. So not only have you paid for the substance, you've paid for the testing, but it will come back telling you what it is.
So then you've got a better person supplying, potentially.
Well, at least for that batch.
At least for that batch, yeah.
So it's...
Just don't tell them.
Just don't tell them. So, you've got the ethics things, which I think really that sort of segues us, I think, quite nicely into natural versus untested federations. We won't call it unnatural federations.
I call it enhanced.
Well, like the enhanced Olympics, which I actually personally, I'd pay to watch because that would be like, seriously, what can you do?
It is very interesting, I think. Honestly, I think it's really interesting. Like I say, I don't necessarily have anything against people who choose to use PEDs, but I think the main issue from it becomes people taking too much, and then in bodybuilding, we raise the bar of the standard to the point where you are expected to take too much. And I think that's where things get a little bit dicey with the ethics is where should we keep the bar versus, well, actually this person is bigger and leaner and that is the criteria. So there is a lot of diciness, like we say. But it's the same with the enhanced Olympics. It's like, well, how much do we shorten your lifespan to make you run 100 meters in 6 seconds?
Exactly. It's like, yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, I think the ethics side, as we mentioned earlier, was if you're going to do it, don't lie about it. You know, it's like people who, like, okay, obviously everybody knows my background is I come from a untested federation, right? But we're just like, it was like the whole American military. Don't ask, don't tell. It's like, you're 300 pounds and jacked and shredded and all year round. It's like, yeah, I'm going to put that down to the spinach and chicken.
You would be surprised how many people, like clients I get, who don't realize that it's not, that a lot of people are taking banned substances. You would be surprised.
Yeah. But, you know, it's if you're going to compete in a federation that is natural, you know, you need to know the rules around that federation. But, you know, basically, it's not making you a better person for being natural. No. It's not making you a better person for being enhanced. It's a different choice. But if you're going to compete in a natural federation such as OCB, NAB, alphabet, know their rules. And if that federation says you need to be a lifetime natural to compete in that federation, then be a goddamn lifetime natural. If that federation says you have to be, they have one of those ethical statements about you have to be natural for at least 7 years, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to know how they came up with that number. But, you know, again, know the rules.
That's a good question, though. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there because that is a very good point. How long do you benefit from your PEDs for? So let's say you do, I don't know, cycle for 6 months. How long do you keep those benefits for?
You are going to lose a reasonably large percentage of those benefits relatively quickly. That's a fact of life. It's how long's a piece of string, right? But the reality of it is you're not going to lose it all. And the reality is, like, you won't lose it all in an advanced time frame as well. You know, there are athletes out there that are heavily used in the past, and they haven't competed or done anything in 10 plus years, and they're still jacked. You know, they're still carrying much more muscle mass than somebody who never used and hasn't done in 10 years. Even for somebody who hasn't trained in 10 years, they still have that density and some say muscle memory, which muscles don't have memory cells, so that's bullshit.
But this is just kind of what I've picked up, correct me if I'm wrong again, but for certain PEDs, it can make you, it can give you, like, not give you, but you can create more muscle cells, whereas usually you cannot create more muscle cells. You have a set amount and you grow them in strength. Is that correct? Maybe?
It's more to do with yes and no. It depends on the compound and it depends on what you're doing.
That's what I'm saying, like certain PEDs can give you extra muscle cells, which you cannot do naturally. It's like liposuction, for example. Like you cannot usually take away fat cells, you can only shrink them.
Yeah. And you'll get people who say, yep, that's the case. And you get other people who come out and say, no, these are the number of muscle cells that you're given from your DNA, blah, blah, blah. This is like the maximum you can get. So there are studies both ways. I go with the position that you will lose some of the gains when you come off, but over what time frame and all that sort of stuff. And that's why you've got those natural federations that literally say you have to be lifetime natty, you got to be 7 years, 5 years, or whatever like that.
See, that's why I don't like a certain federation that I believe it's 3 years. I think that's a bit ridiculous. Is it 3 years or 5?
It's shorter than the ban if you get caught with it taking.
Yeah, that is stupid. That honestly, I'm like, that is dumb. Why would you get caught and then have a shorter ban than the amount of time that you're... So if you follow the rules, you have to be natural for longer, but if you break the rules, you don't have to be natural for as long.
Exactly. It's like, I got caught. Jack it up. You know... That's
oh no, I needed an off season anyway. How unfortunate.
Exactly. 2 years. Excellent. Winning. Like, okay, natural federations, they enforce testing, and untested federations, they operate differently. There's different levels of expectations. The reality is neither path is morally superior. They're just simply different systems. You know, Sully said when we interviewed him from the OCB, and it was a reasonably controversial statement, he felt that the two sports were different. You know, enhanced.
That was a controversial one, actually.
Yeah, and some people got really bent out of shape by that. I was like, it's just an opinion, people. Relax.
So that's interesting because I have also heard the opinion that in some ways using PEDs can be safer than doing a prep without. Like, I mean, again, this is very controversial and it is like it's not a yes or no, it's a very grey area. But I mean, it's kind of like what we talked to, like with peptides, for example, is there's certain allowances that it can give you. So there, again, it's very controversial. There's no right or wrong answer necessarily. It's again, what you're going to risk versus the reward.
Yeah, I think it's a shift of risk. You're yes, the risk of certain factors will be lower when you're using PEDs because of some of the benefits from PEDs. But you're then shifting that risk factor from one column to another column because you've got a different set of risks that you're putting on top.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes back down to making an informed decision, which segues nicely into the next thing I was going to talk about, which is probably the most common question I get asked is, when is the right time to start taking PEDs? And the honest
Depends on
answer
the
is,
person.
there is no right time. And the real answer is
Never.
It's like, unless you're an old bastard like me that actually has no testosterone, then hey, full disclosure, I've been on testosterone replacement therapy for 15 years. And why? Because I abused the crap out of steroids when I was competing.
Which actually, that's another thing, isn't it? For certain things like testosterone, for example, you can become reliant on them, I believe, like because your body stops producing it itself.
Technically, there are ways that you can do to restart it. There are a lot of medical professionals around that you can do, but the reality of it is I munted my endocrine system and I just don't produce the level of testosterone that somebody of my age with my level of physical activity should be doing, and therefore, I could never compete naturally, and I never would, because I know that I'm not. So I'm not going to say otherwise. Look, as much as I like some of these federations around, you will not see me popping up on their stage because I know that I don't meet their criteria, and I will respect that. Also, you'll never see me getting on stage, period.
I was going to say, I would like to...
That ain't happening, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you right now. You heard it here first. That's no, as much as my wife and Rachel have been pushing me, saying,
hang on. No, you will get on the stage, just not as an athlete.
Okay. Yeah, that's different.
There we go.
That's different. That's different. So yes, to go back, there really is. The answer is never. It's, PED use is not a millstone around your neck. It's a voluntary risk decision that you have to make as an individual. So, and a lot of that comes down to getting the right advice. And it's really hard to, if you are thinking that way, and it does happen in this sport. It's, frequently it's like, as I said, one of the most common questions I get is, when should I start? It used to be, when should I start taking, hey coach, when should I start taking testosterone? You're like, dude, you're 18. When you're 40,
you have your own.
Yeah, it's like, you got more than I do, and I've got assistance. But now it's like, when should I start taking peptides? And you're like, I don't even know what a peptide is.
Social media.
So and it's huge there. But it's like, you really, really need to be making informed decisions. You really do need to be looking at, where you're getting this advice from, and not just taking somebody's word for it. That's the hard part. It's like, if you're thinking about it, talk to your coach about it. Like, okay, and as a coach, I personally don't think I should be making the decision for you. I shouldn't be saying, now, Rach, if you want to be competitive, this is what you have to do. I think as a coach, I have a responsibility to talk through with you what the risk factors are, what some of the considerations that you have to do. Like, and it comes down to what federation you're doing. Are you doing a tested or an untested federation? What are your long-term interests? Like, if you're in your 20s, all of you think you're 7 foot tall and bulletproof, and none of this will have an effect on you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you it will have an effect on you because I can speak to personal experience. But,
actually, sorry, is there an age that you think that someone should not even consider it? Like, what do you think would be the age where you could start thinking about considering it? Like, I mean, like, let's say alcohol, for example. Like, we would obviously, like, the age is 18 for, like, being legal. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you probably still shouldn't drink at 18 because you still can't make good decisions. But
you still can't make good decisions at 35, according to my wife. So, that's
no, especially if you're a male.
Mm-hmm. I have no defense to that. Yep.
Well, this is obviously not a great one for you, Chris. I'm putting you on the spot here, but what do you think would be like a more or less an age where you think definitely, like, this would be like, well, not definitely, but this would be my age of drinking alcohol legality?
Honestly, I think for most, like, if you're making that decision to go down that route, I think it's probably less about age, but I would say mid-20s is probably where you could start sort of thinking about it.
This is when you can start thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, the reality is, you shouldn't be looking at it until you've maxed out your natural potential anyway, which most athletes haven't. Unless your nutrition is 100% on point and you've been doing it consistently for several years. Unless your training is 100% on point and you've been doing it consistently for several years. Unless you're coachable and you can actually fill shit out. Yep, I would just censor that one. You have to hit your natural potential, where you're just not getting a response. That's at the point where a lot of bodybuilders will be saying, it doesn't mean you've stopped. It just means it's slowed down. But you have to hit that natural side first. The problem is, and I think a lot of it is driven by the instant gratification that we get from social media and all that sort of stuff now. You want to get that now. And there is no consideration to what this is going to do to your body when you're out of your early 20s. And, when you suddenly start thinking like, well, actually, I would like to have kids, or not knowing what the health damage you potentially have done to your heart, all of these sort of things. It really comes down to that natural ability. And also comes down, like, you're constantly hearing people talk about, oh, you've got to get blood work done and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, the reality of it is, look, blood work's just telling you where you're at. Again, it's still coming down to risk, because what you're doing is you're playing with fire. Yeah, it's natural ability. Once you've maxed that out, then I think it's logical to have that thought. It's like, okay, I have done as much as I can. I am not improving. I am not growing. And yeah, there's a certain element where you're looking at people that are surpassing you. The downside is, I think we're seeing so many, particularly, there's much more PED use in the female classes than most people are willing to admit to. And they're like, oh, I'm only taking Anavar. You're like,
it's really funny. Like some people will also say that certain PEDs aren't really PEDs, and they'll try and justify it as it's natural. It's really interesting. Or they'll say they'll say they're natural because they're natural that week and they've just come off their cycle, and they're like, I don't know. It's really interesting.
I'm natural now. You're like going, it doesn't make you natural. But it's a really difficult question to ask for anybody, and you just need to make sure you're getting the right advice around you, that you're asking the right questions, and you're not being pressured by a coach who says, well, if you want to get your pro card, this is what you have to do. But that coach doesn't give a flying about you. They just want you to get a pro card so they can say, look, I've got another pro card.
Do you think it's possible to get a pro card in an untested federation naturally?
In an open class?
Well, if you're getting a pro card, you have to be open, don't you? Overall.
Well, it
depends on where you are, but
unnamed federation where they have a natural, they award pro cards in their natural shows as well.
Okay, so yeah, in a not natural show, maybe. We're not talking about a natural show.
Yes, I think it is possible. I don't think it's possible. Sorry, it could be somewhat controversial. I don't think it's possible in the men's classes these days. I mean, you might win a pro card, but you're certainly not going to be competitive. And that's the difference too. It's like, well, are you talking about becoming a pro, or are you talking about being a competitive pro? But it's possible, particularly I think in bikini and obviously fit model, swimsuit, etc. In an untested federation, yeah, it is possible. It's very rare, and you have to. Look, if you are not a genetically gifted athlete and have the right drive and the right support systems behind you, the reality is PEDs are not going to make you a pro. You'll just be a bigger pro with different sets of health problems.
Actually, that's the other thing to consider, is it's not just have you maxed out your natural potential, it's also what are your priorities. So once you have maxed out your natural potential, at that point, you still don't have to take that next step. You do not have to.
Just if anybody didn't actually hear that, it's my wife's Alexa is actually informing her that she should be drinking water.
It's quite aggressive.
Yeah, well, it seems to work, so we're going to keep it going.
It's not just please drink some water, it's drink some water for the love of God.
Love of God.
Anyway, but yeah, so it's not a next step that you have to take once you have reached your natural potential. It is, then have to, so yes, you've realized I have maxed out my natural potential. From here, this is as far as I can go naturally. Do I want to go further than that? Do I want to risk those next effects? Yep. Is bodybuilding a priority for me, or is it a hobby that I like to do for fun? Yes, I like doing well, but it's not something I am planning on pursuing at a high level. So that's also something to consider.
Yeah, it's a real difficult one for anybody to answer for themselves. It's like, I don't think anybody really does achieve their maximum potential, natural potential, because we will always be improving. And that's the thing about bodybuilding, right? Or resistance training. You're always going to be adding muscle mass. You're always going to be improving your weakness areas and stuff like that. The reality is it just gets harder. Once it's the law of diminishing returns. It's like, when you first hit the gym, that first year, you're like, everybody's looking at you going, what are you taking? You're like, I'm not, just training and eating. But as your training experience improves and the amount of time you spend in the gym, then the speed of the results you get, essentially it continuously halves every year. You go from gaining 10 kilos to 5 kilos to 2.5 kilos to 1.25 kilos. And then suddenly you're like, if you can put on a kilo in a year, that's a good effort, and that's getting everything right. So whether anybody ever really maximizes their natural potential, I think is open to the discussion. But
more or less. We can say more or less.
Yeah, you're going to slow down.
You've hit that wall of, okay, I'm making a 1% gain per year,
Yeah.
and that sucks.
And I think it's at that point where people go, that's probably at the point where you could have the discussion of, do I look at doing, going down the dark side? But the reality is nobody needs to take PEDs. It's a choice. Nobody's injecting this shit in your ass and saying, you have to do it. If you
it's
do
like
it,
those memes, the reels, and it's just like you fall onto it.
You fall onto it. Yeah, it's like, it doesn't work that way. No,
Slipped on a banana peel. Oh no.
Yeah. Accidentally fell on this hypodermic needle. It's like, oh, really?
And it just happened to be filled with performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah. It's like, oops, oh well, lost my natty card now, can't go back. Nobody's going to make you do it. It's an individual choice. And if you're feeling pressured into doing it by friends, teammates, coaches, social media, you kind of got to grow a set and stand up for yourself, because this is your body that you're messing with. This is your body that you are running the risk with. And it's a calculated risk. If you're going to do it, there will be a price, and you will pay for it, whether it's, health-wise, whether it's emotional-wise. This stuff doesn't come free. There is always going to be a cost, and you need to do your research to decide whether that's worthwhile.
I think that's
you don't need to do it.
That's really important, I think, is that even if your coach is someone amazing like Chris, I don't think that your coach should be the sole provider of the information. I think that you should do your own research as well. Make sure you spread that net wide so that you can get as much information as possible, because it is quite a big decision. You are per body. It's like almost like having a surgery, not quite as invasive, obviously, but you are doing something to your body. You should be aware of all the pros and cons. And I think that your coach should never be the only provider of that information, especially because in a lot of cases, the coach might have a vested interest in that. They can be a little bit biased. So, don't let your friends be the sole provider. Don't let your coach be the sole provider. Get your information everywhere. Get it from unbiased sources as well. Do your own research online. Don't just look at random people who you follow on social media. Like, don't follow the twins for their advice. That's not going to end well. But make sure you are looking at as many unbiased sources as you can to get the most informed choice. I think that's very important.
And the reality of it is, there is not a lot of research done these substances' long-term effect on the human body, basically because they can't get it funded, right? So we don't really know what the long-term effect is of using X, Y, and Z. We've got some limited knowledge of what it does. You can do different things. But from a performance-enhancing perspective and actual sports perspective, there's very little research done on the subject matter. A lot of it is anecdotal. A lot of it is bro science. What you should stack with this and stack with that. Please don't message me afterwards and say, hey, I'm taking this and this. What do you think? Because I'm going to tell you, none of my business. Do it. You do you, pal. But, there is no perfect way of doing this. And the reality is the only perfect way to use PEDs is not to use them.
There you go. Just drink coffee. Close enough.
I'm just picturing Rachel only mainlining caffeine. She's got like the no-dose pills out. She's grinding them up. She's just snorting them up there. It's
you can get caffeine tablets.
I know. I still remember going into a guy who used to be they might still be the head of NABA. I don't know. Do they still exist? He had a supplement store in K Road in Auckland, and it was up on the second floor. K Road in those days was dodgy as shit anyway. In the supplement store up on the second floor, and you could buy pure ephedrine, pure caffeine, and pure aspirin, and we were just like,
right,
18 years old. It's like, geez.
18-year-old boys, honestly.
I know, we should actually, 18-year-old boys, we shouldn't be allowed out in public, period. It's like, we should just be...
Yeah, males should not be able to make their own decisions until they're at least like 25.
25? Geez, you're generous. I was going to say
minimum.
like 37.
Again, minimum.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. But look, the reality about PEDs is in this sport they exist. But there's also, the reality is now you have a choice. There are we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years a multitude of particular growth in the tested federations. And I applaud those guys. I mean, it's to the extent that the largest untested federation suddenly decided to come out with a tested division. So what does that mean? Everybody's doing the untested shows is rocking up fully geared to the gills? No, it doesn't. But, there's a reason that these these drug-tested federations are now becoming a really dominant force in the sport. And it doesn't make a tested athlete a lesser athlete than an untested athlete. It means that person made a choice. Whether they did it for ethical reasons or whether they did it for health reasons, they are still athletes. And what we're seeing now in the tested federations is you are seeing the quality of the athletes improve. They are getting to the point where you are like, damn, that person can kick some serious butt. Are you seeing the mass? No. Are you? I mean, you look.
You really have a choice as a natural athlete. So you can kind of have size or you can have conditioning. It's kind of hard to have both.
Yeah. But there's becoming more and more knowledge now around training as a natural athlete, like conditioning as a natural athlete. I mean, it used to be you could always tell a natural athlete because they were overtrained. They overdieted, they overtrained because they thought the only way that they could get in condition was to do the 12 hours of cardio a day and eat, sticks of celery and, suck on the fumes of a boiled egg. But it was a little extreme. And you could always, they were the ones that always sort of say something like, they look like they were going to fall over and drop dead. But, knowledge has increased. So you are seeing beautiful quality athletes coming out in the natural sides. I'd say the ICN in New Zealand 4 years ago, the quality of the athletes was not great. In the last couple of years, you've seen really, really good athletes coming out of that federation and who could compete relatively successfully against untested athletes.
Well,
and I think that's
example. I've competed in untested shows. I've competed against untested athletes. In how many shows have I done? I think I've done at least 6 shows untested, and I've only ever placed outside of the top 3 one time, and that was my first ever nationals. Every other time I've placed top 3 in the open class, not even just the novice. It's the open class. So you can place very well as a natural athlete in an untested show. It's just going to be very, very difficult for you to go beyond. Like once you get to the pro level, if you're natural, it's going to be very, very difficult to stand against some of those enhanced athletes.
And I think that's where wrongly, at the risk of getting myself in trouble, that untested pro divisions look down at tested pros because it's almost like you're not a real bodybuilder. And we've heard that come out of various people.
It comes from both sides. It's really funny. Like both sides are like, no, you're not a real bodybuilder. It's like,
I did this naturally. I did it the hard way. It's like, well. But again, there is, Jesus, I'm going to forget his name. Daniel Hibbs out of Christchurch. I have never seen a more conditioned athlete in my life. And he is 100% natural and has been he would be a god if he actually went on the gear. But, it's a choice and it doesn't make you less for making that decision. But if you make the decision to stay natural or to be enhanced, own it, be true to who you are. But again, if you're going to be a natural athlete, great. And I applaud you for it. If you're going to be an enhanced athlete, don't compete in a natural show. Don't lie. Don't try and pass the things. I mean, like back in my day, we used to test at the national level. And if you failed the test, you couldn't go pro. But, you can be a very, very good and successful athlete naturally. You do not need to be using any form of PEDs. And I'm sorry, boys and girls, there's no such thing as like, just use a little bit. I just did one cycle. It's like, no, once you lose your natty card, you've gone to the dark side.
Because again, that you will still retain a little bit of that benefit that you got.
Yeah, and it's like anything. Once you've had a taste, you're probably not going to go back. So again, it's about risk assessment. You make the decision for yourself. And again, there are very, very strong untested federations around the world. Obviously, the NPC is the largest from an amateur perspective, but there are very, very strong natural options as well. Again, the quality of natural athletes, we're seeing it in New Zealand and Australia and worldwide. It is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Sure, I would say from the bikini and the swimsuit and the fit model side, there are world-class natural athletes that have never touched a drop of anything in their lives. And it is achievable. At the pro open level bodybuilding, well, you only have to look at the pros in all the federations from across the world. And you put them up against a pro from something like, the IFBB Pro League or IFBB Federation or PCA or any of those bigger untested federations. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to look at them and go, there's a little something going on there.
Yeah, no, even bikini athletes getting pretty jacked these days in the untested side of things. But yeah, it's a personal decision, people. Again, please stop hating on each other for it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as long as people aren't being dishonest about it, who really cares? How does it affect you? It doesn't affect you in any way. It really doesn't.
It's that person's choice, and if that person, like, I will have conversations frequently with athletes about performance enhancing drugs, not because I'm for or against, because I think it's a personal choice, but it is my job as a coach to help you make the decision that is right for you. And if you make the decision one way or the other, is to support you in as controlled and intelligent and supportive manner as possible. With PED uses, more doesn't necessarily mean better. There is a rule of diminishing returns. And at the end of the day, particularly from a female athlete, and Rachel, you've heard, I don't know how many times you've heard me say this, the two most important things that roles I have as a coach is to preserve your health and preserve your femininity. And if I am jacking you full of every single androgen, anabolic, peptides, or whatever, in order to get a result, I'm not doing that. But it doesn't make an enhanced athlete better or a natural athlete better. It just means they're an athlete and they have made that choice for themselves. Again, it comes down to the critical thing. If you are a competitive bodybuilder and you choose to compete in a natural, drug-tested federation, then abide by their rules. If you break those rules, then you deserve the punishment. And if you are going to be an enhanced athlete competing in a natural federation, you deserve to get caught. Because not only are you lying to yourself, you are lying to the other competitors, and you deserve to be banned. And you get caught, I'm sorry, but you should be. And that's it. Go and play in an untested federation. That's what they're there for. The reality of it is, if you need to use PEDs to compete against a national athlete,
That's
honestly,
a bit sad.
who's the better athlete? If you need to do it to compete against a natural athlete and they are beating you, then you shouldn't be using PEDs anyway.
It's like going to compete again. Like, I mean, it's hard to say this without being insulting, but it's like when a natural athlete gets told or asked, "Oh my gosh, are you taking something? You look like you're taking something." You're like, "Oh, why, thank you."
Oh, thanks. No, but thank you for noticing.
But at the same time, we're also like, "Oh my god, if I looked like this and I was taking something, I'd be mad."
Yeah, I'd want my money back. You're like, yeah. It's a personal choice. You just need to know the risk, and then the reality of it is,
it's like, why would you choose? It's like, as you're just like, why would you choose? Like, it's, I don't want to say an easy win, but it is going to be easier. Like,
well, you would think so. I mean, the reality of it is, but again, it comes down to that.
It should be if you're doing it.
But it still comes down to, if you don't do everything right, no amount of PEDs is going to turn you into a world champion. Yeah. I mean, the reality of it is, guys like Nick Walker, who are a freak of nature, if he didn't have everything right, it wouldn't matter the amount of PEDs that he was using. He would not look like that, and he wouldn't achieve the results that he did. You've got to do everything right. And the reality of it is, if you do everything right, there is no need to do PEDs. Because the reality is, if you do everything right and you go up against somebody who does everything right and they use PEDs, you can't beat.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, using myself as an example, I know for a fact that I have placed ahead of enhanced athletes. Yep. I know for a fact that some of the athletes that I've beaten in a show have been using particular PEDs. So it does not guarantee you a placing if you are using PEDs. Like, yes, it can be very, very helpful in certain ways, but again, yeah, it is your choice and it does not guarantee anything. You still need to be lifting, you still need to do your posing, you still need to eat your food.
Yep. Eat your food. Eat your wheat bix, take your multivitamins, as Hulk Hogan used to say your prayers. Well, you've got to tick all the boxes. Otherwise, it's not going to. But we're only talking like PEDs in the perspective of competitive bodybuilding. The reality of it is, what would be considered a PED in bodybuilding is not necessarily, a PED in normal life. Like, as I said, the reality is peptides, their primary focus is on health. It is unregulated. There's a lot of things with it, but they're tools. It's like people talk about, you only have to do a 5-minute search on social media, and then somebody's going to go on about GLPs, and then you're generally going to get some form of coach or trainer like myself they're going to be the most vehemently against them, and they say, no, you just need to harden up and be tough and stick to the plan and follow my 12-week plan for $99 a week, and we'll get you shredded, and you may lose this. And it's like, well, and then somebody says, yeah, but for this amount of money and take this little thing here. The thing is, GLPs, they work, and they're a tool to achieve a result. But if you're taking a GLP in order to be a competitive bodybuilder, that's a performance enhancing drug, and you're using it for performance enhancement. You're not necessarily using it as a health management tool. You're not using it for improved longevity. You're not using it for fixing metabolic damage that's been done. Again, you've got PEDs from this side of the equation, which is whether you're a competitive bodybuilder or you're an influencer bodybuilder or whatever the term is. If you're going to do it, if somebody asks you and you don't want to answer, just say, look, I really don't want to talk about it.
Yes, I don't
It's a
want to
lot
say.
difference. Yeah, it's a lot different than saying, "Oh, I'd never do that," and you've still got the freaking needle sticking out your ass.
Oh my god, that has been a thing. There's been a few people called out with needle marks.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, it's like, I can see the swelling, the welt marks in your glutes. So, and they're not the same on both sides. So there's no need to bullshit about it. And as I said, again, it comes down to, if you choose to use PEDs, don't compete in a natural tested show. Because not only is it, it's not illegal, okay? Because there's no law around it. It's unethical.
Some substances are illegal.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but they're
illegal
all
to take
without
a prescription,
and pretty much illegal to be prescribed, because there is no medical use for this unless you've actually got a medical condition.
Depending on what it is, yeah.
But again, doesn't make you better or worse whether you which side of the coin you choose from. It's not our job here today to tell you that you should or you should not use any form of performance enhancing. All I can do is beg, plead, whatever to you, is make an informed decision and just keep an eye on your health. Again, there's no such thing as healthy use of PEDs. Okay? It's how do you minimize the risk? Know the risk, know what you're doing, and yeah, just do you.
Don't be dumb.
Don't be, yeah. That's, if you take anything in today's episode, is don't be a jackass idiot.
I was gonna say, don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick. That's how that'll be the real today. So, what did you guys all learn today?
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. And yeah, as I said,
That's about it.
Enhanced athletes don't look down on the natural guys. They work just as hard.
And natural people don't look down on anyone else.
Just because they work just as hard. They're just playing with a different set of risks.
It's really funny. You and I get in so much trouble from everyone because we don't take sides.
No, it's like, I don't care. It's your choice.
We're like, just everyone be friends, and everyone's like, no.
Pick a side, damn it. And it's
But
like, I
we
don't want to pick a side. Yeah, I just like everybody.
I'll be friends with you, and I'll be friends with you. And they're like, no, you must choose one of us. You can't be friends with both.
I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much how this sport goes in this country, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully
we don't get cancelled. But in summary, don't be a dick. And I think we should probably sign off
before we do get ourselves in trouble. But yeah. So in closing, please like and subscribe and follow us on Spotify and YouTube. And the lesson for today, boys and girls, don't be a dick.
And just, be careful with what you're doing. But, enjoy, everyone. Have a great day. And hopefully we had a good cardio and learned something new.